I think we've just very nicely addressed the first of my two questions, which was why do you believe people resist so strongly the logic and evidence you present? And I think that's because they're taking it personally, and that they're actually feeling as if their identity is threatened, because it is. And I know from personal experience how challenging that can be, because I killed the Buddha when I moved here and I left active service at the university. I mean, my entire identity was suddenly thrown into the bonfire, and I had to change how I perceived myself, and much less how other people perceive me. So my second question that I would like you to address is, how do you deal with the pushback, with the resistance to your message, both personally and professionally? And especially, how do you maintain a professional demeanor while dealing with it? Because I have a hard time with
that. I'm laughing because there have been times when I have not maintained a professional demeanor. Telling somebody,
we feel better now.
Telling somebody to F off is not particularly a professional demeanor, I think. And
that's not? I've been doing it wrong.
I think that I've gone through phases where what I did at first, when I would get the term I use a lot of times for what actually happens is not that people are actually engaging with the materials themselves, but instead they are shadow boxing. You know, they're boxing their own projections of what I say, because I'm not actually saying what they're saying. I've had people go, "Oh my God, you can't take away our hope. Our hope is so important," and you know, I'm destroying all things that are beautiful in the world when I talk about hope. But it's like, no, actually, I'm very specific that hope is a longing for a condition, a future condition over which you have no agency. And if you honestly have no agency, I have no problem with having hope. I mean, there are things that are out of my control that I hope that once industrial civilization is gone, that all the feedback loops that you described so eloquently, I hope that with the primary insult gone, that there is at least some chance that grasses and prairies and forests can sequester carbon fast enough to keep this planet from turning into Venus, you know, and that part is completely beyond my control. Or I hope that let's pretend there wasn't global warming for a moment, you know, salmon are getting hammered anyway, and if it would be ridiculous to say we hope that salmon continue to survive without actually doing anything to help them. But if you remove all the dams, then you have to hope that the salmon will do what they do, because that's beyond your control. So my point is that when people attack me for talking about hope, they're usually attacking the wrong thing, and this happens all the time. What I used to at the start of my career, when people would write me notes attacking me for something, I would generally try to engage with them on a reasonable level. I would address their concerns, but what I found is that every time I would address some of the concerns, more would come up, and then I would address those, and more would come up, until eventually they would end up cursing me. And what I realized is that oftentimes I'm going to back up. I was dating somebody years and years ago, decades ago, who was picking fights all the time, and I didn't understand why she was always picking fights until one day I went to teach in the evening, and I had chickens and dogs at the time, and I forgot it was after dark, and I never fed the dogs during the day because the chickens would eat the food. So I left to go to teach in the evening, and I forgot to feed the dogs before I left. And so when I got home, it was late at night, and they had chewed up a bunch of boxes and scattered that all over. And I realized, okay, if I was hungry and annoyed and I couldn't express it in English, that I would chew up boxes. You know, the dogs were mad at me, so that's why they chewed up the boxes. And so I realized that this person I was dating was, if I wanted to break up with somebody and couldn't do it, one thing I might do is pick a bunch of fights. So I realized that she was not able to break up, but instead she was picking fights left and right. And that was the real meta message. And I've realized this is central to a lot of my work is the notion that you can't always trust rhetoric, and you can't always trust. In fact, you quite often can't. The Nazis had themselves convinced that they were doing a good thing and not a bad thing. And as people destroy the earth, they have themselves convinced they're developing natural resources. As Robert J. Lifton's talked about, before you can commit any atrocity, you have to convince yourself that you actually have a claim to virtue, that you're doing a good thing. And that one of the things that's, I think, really central to all my work is the belief that a lot of our discourse consists of rationalizing pre-existing positions and pre-existing prejudices. And most of our philosophy consists of rationalizing, for example, human supremacism. Or in capitalism, any capitalist theory consists of rationalizing the exploitation that is capitalism. And those have an underlying urge. And so what I realized pretty early on in dealing with people who were upset with my work was that a lot of times it was an emotional reaction, and when I attempted to address the actual content of what they were saying, it always ended up with them cursing me. So then that was the first stage, is when I would address it directly. The second stage was after a couple of years of doing this, I basically cut to the chase and handled it extremely unprofessionally, where they would send me, a note that was on the surface. On the surface, it was okay, but beneath it, I knew where it was going to end, and I would just cut to the chase and say, get lost. And that was not professional at all. And these days, honestly, I don't usually respond to them at all because I know where it's going to end.